Welcome to a video where I discuss the downfall of a great gem which was ruined by greed, and the game goes by the name Trove. So what is Trove? Trove is a voxel MMORPG made by Trove Worlds in the late 2009. It is a free game downloadable on Steam, and later on it was taken over by Game Ago in 2018, where its downfall started to occur. So I'm going to discuss what made Trove such a great game before this downfall occurred. So the first thing that made Trove really good was its combat and dungeons. The combat was very simple and fun, easy to learn, and you could really have a lot of fun just playing one character, simply playing around with the abilities without having to worry about combos, uptime, insane damage rotations. It was really fun. It was very engaging as well, to a point where the longer you played, you essentially wanted to try out more characters. It was just that fun. The dungeons were simple and quick. The design was spot on, very engaging, fun, quick. There's nothing really to say here. The dungeons were it just worked. The 3-star dungeons you'd find are kind of like semi-raids. They had 2 bosses and then like a 3rd boss, which was far more stronger than the 2 previous bosses, and the loot you can get was really good as well. It was just really fun. Going with a couple people and just destroying that 3-star dungeon for the first time. You were like raiding with people you didn't even know. It was really good. And the design of these, as I said previously, dungeons were so good that you would just bomb your way through these dungeons. It was that fun. You just bomb your way through. I don't know if it was intentional, but it's a voxel, so it kind of makes sense, right? There's a bit of sandbox in there as well. It was really good. It works. You just put 2 things together, and it works. Grinding was really fun. And what made it fun? Well, it was easy, simple, engaging, and you could just have a blast due to the design of the dungeons with the pals. You just blast through it. Great fun. Now, believe it or not, back in the day, we had free classes. Yep, that's right. You can just play the game and you earn qubits by completing dungeons. Throughout the week, you would get double qubits. So by playing for, I think it was a week and a half, you'd end up being capable of buying yourself a class. And there were a lot of classes. Due to the simple nature of having a simple playstyle from every single class, it was very easy to pick up a class and enjoy it. And it wouldn't really hurt if, oh man, I bought the Tomb Raiser and I don't like the minion playstyle. Okay, just go back to your old class, for example, Candy Barbarian, play for another week, and then buy yourself a Neo Ninja. And wow, I enjoy this class. Awesome. And then you're gonna play for a bit, and then you unlock another class, Shadow Hunter. Oh, I don't like it, etc., etc. It was really fun and simple, and it really just encouraged you to play more. And playing with your friends or alone, you really had something to do. The gameplay loop was very simple. You had an auto attack, 1 heavy attack which used up your energy, a normal skill, and 1 ultimate skill. As I said previously, a very simple playstyle, and it really just brings you a lot of fun and creativity to the table due to how much classes you could have for free. You didn't even have to worry about spending a penny. Yes, you could buy credits and just get it all instantly, but why if you can just discover the classes yourself and have absolute pure fun? And this was a genius idea by Trove Worlds to engage players to have an even greater time playing this game which didn't really waste your time because it respected it with fun. Progression. Now, progression is a very important part of every MMO. It's what drives gamers to progress further for the game, have fun, know that they're getting stronger and are capable of doing harder content if you're a PvE maniac. Progression in Trove was very simple. You had gear ranging from common to shadow back in the day, and you would essentially drop shadow trying to get really good stats. Then you could upgrade it from level 1 to 5 and get it to Radiant. This was the peak back then. This gave you cool effects and really showed off your capability of being a good player. There were also 3 items in the game: a hat, face, and a weapon that would drop randomly by doing dungeons and raids, Shadow Tower. And you also had a ring, which was a RNG item by crafting that you would hunt to get really good stats on by just constantly crafting it over and over again. Hunting for God Roll was really fun and satisfying quite quick because by just blasting to the dungeons, you can get a pretty good item and it made the grind just not really that boring, really. It's actually quite fun. Also, the gear was usable on many characters, as long as it had the same stat as other classes, so magic for magic classes and physical for physical classes. And this means that you essentially needed to only have 2 sets of insane gear for all of your classes, and this would be really time efficient and way more fun to play the game as you weren't forced to farm out a single item for every single class in the game, which would be very time consuming. Then some time has passed and we have gotten a new update which introduced Stellar gear, which was way stronger than Radiant. You could upgrade from Radiant to Stellar so you could keep your gear, and we had 10 more levels, so this made the whole journey for progression far more better, way more enjoyable, and also our characters were far more stronger, and you could really connect to an item and have a journey with that item. You could really just be part of the world. Your gear actually meant something, and that was just pure fun of a very simple progression system that just worked. Now onto my favorite section in this video, and that is going to be raiding, which was the whole end game of Trove, which was all done in Shadow Tower. So this is where progression has led up. You had to gear up to be strong enough to do this, and then you would group up with the whole server and you would do it. So how did it look like? You had 4 bosses back in the day. They've added 2 new bosses quite some time after, but there were 4 main bosses in the beginning. You had the Spike Walker, which is like a spider who would spawn in spikes. You had the Weeping Prophet, which was like a alien that would throw down eyes and shoot lasers. Pinata, which was an absolute ad house. It was just full of ads, absolute chaos. And then you had Daughter of the Moon, which was the final boss of the Shadow Tower, so like the biggest, hardest boss with 3 phases. Sometime after, quite a long time after, I believe when Tryon was around, they've added Hydras, like a big Hydra boss, which was spilling acid. Quite hard-hitting boss, actually, quite difficult. And then I think when Game Ago took over, they've added Dreadnought, which is by far, in my opinion, the hardest boss in Shadow Tower at that time. I think they've nerfed the boss, I'm not too sure, but it was extremely difficult, insane mechanics, very hard hitting, an actual wipe mechanic as well. And these bosses, of course, required a team, a big team. There were also 3 difficulties: normal, hard, and ultra, and I believe every difficulty increased the drop rate of higher shadow tier items. So if you drop like a level 3 shadow, you had insane luck, and it really saved you a lot of materials. So this difficulty system alone brought up a quite healthy loop, because you could try on all characters and cure up all of your characters without actually having to farm in dungeons if you were sick of that. But this gear actually mattered. See, back then, gear actually had a meaning. Dropping a really good sword meant that you could do enough damage to actually take down these really difficult bosses in the Shadow Tower. So the grind was essentially, it paid off. The time you invested actually rewarded you with better gear for other classes, which again, as I mentioned before, creates a nice, healthy loop. Okay, now since I've explained how the endgame activity, the Shadow Tower, works, I will now discuss a little bit about every single boss and what they do and really what makes it fun. And the first boss we have is the Spike Walker. It's just like a spider out of spikes, essentially. His whole main mechanic was just like whenever he did a heavy attack, he would push in nails into the ground and they were there forever till he died. So the whole mechanic was actually trying to either A, quick enough before he spawned enough spikes, or try and kite him around the room so he would spawn these spikes in like a corner and just drag them all across till he dies. I remember the first time I did it with my friend, we actually didn't kill him because we were so weak at the time. Our gear was not good at all, and the whole room was full of spikes. We couldn't kill him. End of story. We tried to try again. We got it sometime later, but it was difficult. Next boss, a bit harder, was Weeping Prophet. This boss had a mechanic where he would essentially throw down eyes and they would shoot lasers. I think it was like a one-hit kill when you were like very early in the game, so pretty difficult. And he would also throw down, I think he would actually spit poison at you or something like that, and they'll do damage. Not that difficult, you had to just watch out for the lasers. Oh, also the Spike Walker, he had like a knockback effect. Like he would go in like a wee ball and he would shoot out a laser and that would like knock you back, and he would try and roll you over as well. Then the third boss, a Pinata. This guy's an absolute powerhouse in terms of ads. He would just spawn hundreds of ads. I know it wasn't hundreds, like 30 to 40, but it felt like it was 100, full army, and if you didn't have the ad clear, you were just gonna get swarmed by these little pinatas. It was insane. That was really the whole thing. He would also like spit at you and knock you back, but there were so many ads that it was unbearable. Then we had the Hydra, so that's one of the new bosses they've had later on. And the whole purpose of this guy was, well, he was just really spitting tons of acid, but it really hurt. And that was the whole kind of gimmick. You just kind of had to avoid the acid and try and DPS him, and then he would eventually die. Every couple percent of his damage, like his HP, whenever you knock out a portion of his HP, one head would pop off, and that would mean less acid. So the fight was easier the longer it went on. Then the second new boss, second last as well, is the Dreadnought. This guy is a maniac. So it's kind of like a Spike Walker, but he has like a, I think, big brain in the middle. I don't really know. And essentially, from what I remember, he had a minigun. So he would just kind of stand still and shoot like a minigun, I think in an arc. Then he had a blade, which I think was an instant kill. If it would get you, he would just like power up and then just slash you. Then he also, I think, at one point would I think shoot fire. And that fire would be kind of like the spikes from the Spike Walker, and they'll, be there for a little while and then they would disappear. He also had like this repair mechanism. Still don't know what this does, but I think he was like repairing himself, or maybe he was taking reduced damage during that phase. And then my favorite part, a wipe mechanic. This dude would shoot a nuke, and you had to stand there were 4 corners in an arena, and you had to go to one of them to survive. It was insane. Amazing. And then Daughter of the Moon, final boss. What made this boss difficult was that she had 3 phases, so in every phase she would do something different. So in the first phase, she just had a sword, just normal attacks. She had one wipe mechanic, and it wasn't that she would kind of like try to like stab the sword into the ground and draw a moon, and then she would do like a spin and an attack, and that would instant kill you. It did insane damage. If you survive that, I don't know how much HP you needed for that, but it was insane difficult. Her second phase, so I think like 1/3 down of her HP. Her second phase, I think she was using a gun, Yeah, I think she was using a gun, and she was like shooting you with lasers, I think, as well. And then the third phase was she had like fists with like spikes, and she would also shoot out lasers, and she would also throw down her gun, and that gun was invincible, and they would keep shooting you. And I think she was also spawning like cloud bombs from the top, and they were kind of like, again, permanent obstacles they had to avoid. And she would occasionally throw like a spinning moon. Amazing mechanics, and this is what really makes the endgame in Shadow Tower so cool. You had to coordinate, and it was really just something. Like, you actually had to gear up, communicate, and just learn. And that's what really put the community together. It was awesome. Also, the servers were very laggy on Monday for the Shadow Tower because they had bonus loot, but who cares, it was just that fun due to how much instances were open at the same time. The servers just couldn't handle it, but it was fun. Now, I'm not a PvP gamer myself, however the good old classic Capture the Flag PvP was balanced with equal health and damage for everyone. It was easy to get into, and although it was quite repetitive, you can really see your skills increase and it felt good. It was very enjoyable for a PvE player. It was just really fun, simple, quick, fast paced. It's pretty decent, really. With all the good stuff out the way, what caused such a great game like Trove to slowly fall apart into dust from once was a beautiful gem? With its core elements gone, such as progression, endgame, raiding, and free classes, I will now show you the reality, the sad reality of Trove. So, the first main aspect that was hurt in Trove was progression when gems came out. So gems generally served as another system where you would develop your character and make it stronger. But the one thing that the gems overshadowed was gear, which made progression completely, well, not useless, but it didn't really exist anymore by farming gear. Essentially, the way the gems work was you would have 3 colors, and now there's a bit more, but there were 3 colors, and generally they would buff your character with stats. And the main stats are just damage, crit damage, and crit chance. And that's it. On the big gems, you usually have maybe a bit of health, but if you just go full class cannon, that's just how it's gonna be. Like, that's all you need. Gear no longer means anything. You don't even need good gear, because when you put on those gems of full damage, every character becomes godlike. So again, another point is classes no longer really feel unique, because every class has just the same gems and gear doesn't really matter. Yes, you can have more attack speed or more energy regen, but who cares if you've got millions of damage, 2000% crit damage, and you got 100% crit chance all the time. Too easy, no challenge. The only annoying is you need quite good RNG to get the gems to drop, but what's the problem? If you got so much damage, you can just blast through dungeons and stack up. One good thing though, class gems do, so it's like a class gem you can get later on, you can equip one at a time, and essentially, well, there's only one for every class, and it changes the class's gameplay. The most iconic one is Hunter, where you've mainly relied on attack speed, but when you put the class gem, it becomes a minigun. Pretty cool. It's kind of disappointing how Tryon actually slipped up here so bad. They were doing so good, but they just failed of this one by overshadowing the most important part of any MMO, I'd say any game really, is progression. Gems ruined it, gear no longer means anything. It was quite a disappointing day for Trove. Now here we are on to probably the worst update by GameGo, their first plague, I'd say, that started to corrupt Trove was the addition of delves. This completely killed Shadow Tower. Essentially, Shadow Tower no longer had its rewards. They were now moved into delves. So Shadow Tower number 1 became absolutely useless, only really used for mount farming or just achievements in general. But delves is just it's a way more worse version of Shadow Tower. It's boring, repetitive, and the only challenge really is that just enemies become more of damage sponges the further down you go, which is apparently considered a challenge. But what makes it bad? Well, that's the first thing, damage sponges, but also there's no mechanical challenges with bosses. Bosses generally are just the same enemies you would fight previously. Maybe the models are a bit changed, but nothing too special. There are some sort of modifiers in the beginning for every single run, so more enemies, more health, or maybe they have like thorn damage, or maybe ice bombs appear and it's quite slippery, but that's not really fun. The way it works, essentially, you had to clear every single room of enemies. You sometimes had to clear the little monoliths to get like the checkpoints, and then you spawn the boss at the end, and that's what you do. You just run for every single room, kill enemies, boss, next floor, and the deeper you go, the harder it gets. But it's not really fun. There's no more raiding. There's no more big group meetups of the boys, server meetups. It's just, yes, I think it's a bit lighter on the servers, but it's not really as fun as Shadow Tower. That was the end game. That was the raiding. This is where you would gear up your character to do, and now it's gone. Well, it's still there, but it's completely useless now. And now you face off the Delves, which is like the apparently new Shadow Tower, but it's way worse. Just so bad. Like, it's, yes, you can speed level, but it is just so bad. Honestly, the first time I played it, I was very disappointed, and still am. Still leaves a very sour taste. I have no idea how you can ruin such a simple raiding in-game activity and just replace it with this hot garbage. So bad. Tryon managed to screw up the second time before Game Bingo, which is quite funny, essentially by making classes craftable now. So there was no more fun unlocking classes by just playing the game and really trying out everything in your own time. Around 2017, they made them craftable. So materials are way too grindy, plus heavy RNG with chaos cores, which limits the curiosity of trying new classes, which resulted in a big time sink. You kind of question if it's even worth it. And the gameplay becomes kind of boring due to being limited to a couple classes due to, well, if you're very unlucky with RNG, you could be playing for weeks before you see another character. Also, you can just buy all the classes if you want to, if you don't feel like grinding, and it makes more sense to do it now than it did before, just because of how horrible it is to unlock all the classes now. So after all of this, the main question is, can Trove be improved? Well, in my opinion, if they were to actually add cross-platform between PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch, it would really revive the game, and there'll be more of a sense of community, because PC is separate from consoles, and I think Switch is also separate, so the community there is quite dry. I think console's more popular than PC, but it's just dry. It's barely anyone there. The market's just ruined and all that stuff. Also, if they were to bring back progression, which is the most important thing, that would really just bring back life to the game. Actually grinding with more fun again, and I would have a purpose. And I think an easy fix for that would be to bring back Shadow Tower. Actually, some sort of high end game raiding or dungeon mechanisms, like maybe a raid with more difficulties and a boss, like more bosses, mechanics, white mechanics like dreadnought, stuff like that. But actually, so it gives you rewards, like actual good rewards with plenty of resources. That would be really good. So that would again tie into raiding to bring back the community together. And that could maybe actually revive Trove for the better, as long as progression's back and cross-platform, with like good rating, like end game for PvE players, and make the good old PvP not club only, but make it a public game mode as well. That would satisfy both PvE and PvP sides of the game. Like, both communities would be really happy about that, and I think that would really benefit the game. But as long as gaming goes in charge of Trove, I doubt the game will come back to its glory days, which is a shame. To end this off, it's sad to see such a gem crumble to dust by greed. Maybe one day Trove will be bought by another company and the game will be great again, but for now, memories is all that's left.